Captain Daniel Reeves never thought a normal patrol shift would change his entire life. He was a man of habit, a soldier who followed orders, and someone who believed in keeping things simple. But fate often ignored simplicity, especially in deep space. Where humans worked alongside strange and powerful alien civilizations, the research station. Horizon's Edge floated quietly on the rim of a glowing nebula. Its giant observation windows reflected the light of purple clouds and storms of golden lightning, deep within the cosmic mist. The station was neutral ground, where different alien species came together to trade, negotiate, and sometimes argue. For Daniel, it was supposed to be an easy assignment: guard duty, peacekeeping, and making sure no one did anything foolish. That day, however, was different. The Zenari delegation had arrived. They were tall, graceful beings with shimmering scales and long tails that curved like ribbons of silk. At their center was Queen Zaylira, ruler of her people. Her presence was overwhelming, not because of power or pride, but because she carried herself like someone who bore the weight of millions of lives on her shoulders. Daniel stood at attention in the docking bay, helmet tucked under his arm, trying not to look nervous. He had never seen the Queen before, though he had heard plenty of rumors. Some said the Zainari tales were sacred, that to touch them without permission was worse than an insult. It was a violation of their deepest traditions. Daniel didn't think he would ever get close enough for that to matter. He was just a human soldier, one among many. His job was simple: keep the peace, stand still, and stay out of trouble. The first meeting, the Queen moved past him with her entourage, her silver blue scales shining under the docking lights. Her eyes, sharp and golden, glanced at him for a brief moment. It was enough to make Daniel's heart skip. There was something about her gaze. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't soft either. It was the look of someone who had seen far too much. The ceremony ended quickly. The Queen and her people were escorted to the council chamber. Daniel thought that would be the last time he saw her up close. He didn't know how wrong he was. Disaster strikes years later. Daniel was patrolling the upper deck when the alarms began to scream. The nebula outside flashed with violent light, and the entire station shook as if struck by a giant's hand. Emergency sirens echoed through every corridor. "Radiation flare," shouted one of the technicians. "Shields are failing on the east wing." Daniel rushed toward the council chamber, his cute instinct telling him that the most important lives on the station were gathered there. As he arrived, the walls groaned and sparks flew from broken circuits. Alien guards tried to keep order, but chaos spread fast. Then it happened. A beam tore free from the ceiling, crashing down toward the delegation. The alien guards froze, their instincts pulling them back rather than forward. But Daniel didn't think he moved. He sprinted, diving across the floor as the beam fell. He had no time to calculate, no time to hesitate. His only thought was to protect whoever stood in its path. When the dust cleared, Daniel found himself lying across the floor, his arms wrapped protectively around something, soft, scaled, and alive. The accident, he looked down and froze. His body had shielded Queen Zalyera, but more than that, his arms had landed across her long tail, protecting it from the crushing beam. Silence fell across the chamber. Every Zenari stared, their golden eyes wide. Even the human soldiers stood in shock. Daniel scrambled to his feet, his face burning with embarrassment. "Your Majesty, forgive me. I didn't mean," but the Queen did not shout, nor did she pull away in disgust. Instead, she rose slowly, her gaze fixed on him. Her tail curled slightly, brushing against his boots before settling back behind her. "You shielded my tail," she said softly, her voice carrying through the room like music. Daniel swallowed hard. "It was an accident. I was only trying to keep you safe." Her guards shifted uneasily, some whispering to each other. To them, it was no small thing. The tail of a Zinari queen was not to be touched by any hand, alien or otherwise. Yet this human had not only touched it, he had shielded it, risking his life. The weight of meaning later. When the station stabilized and the flare passed, Daniel thought the matter would be forgotten. He assumed the Queen would dismiss it as a foolish human blunder. But that night, As he stood outside her temporary quarters, he learned how wrong he was. 2 Zanari guards approached him. "The Queen has given orders," one said, his voice low and serious. "You are to remain near her at all times." Daniel frowned. "That can't be right. I'm just a captain." "Surely you've got your own." The guard's golden eyes hardened. "It is her will. You shielded her tail. Do you not understand what that means to our people?" "No," Daniel admitted honestly. Before the guard could explain, the door to the Queen's chamber slid open. Zalira herself appeared, tall and radiant, even in the dim hallway light. She looked directly at Daniel. "You will stay by my side," she said simply. Daniel felt his throat go dry. "Your Majesty, with respect, it was just instinct." "I didn't mean to." Her gaze silenced him. Not harsh, but commanding in a way that left no room for refusal. "To shield the Queen's tail is the highest form of loyalty among my people," she said. "No guard of mine has ever done it. Yet you, a human, did so without hesitation. Do you call that an accident?" Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. How could he explain? To him, it had been nothing more than instinct. The same kind of reflex that made a soldier dive for a grenade to save his squad. But to her it meant something far greater. A new bond from that moment forward. Daniel's life was no longer his own. Wherever the Queen went, he was ordered to follow. In meetings, she gestured for him to stand beside her. During meals, she requested that he remain nearby. Even when she walked through the gardens of the station, her golden eyes often flicked back, making sure he was still there. The other humans teased him behind closed doors. The Zainari, however, treated him with a strange mixture of awe and suspicion. Some muttered that it was unthinkable that a human had been elevated to such closeness with their queen. Others bowed their heads slightly as he passed, as if the act itself had marked him as someone sacred. Daniel didn't know how to feel. He was proud to have protected a life, yes, but he was also uneasy. He had not asked for this role, nor did he fully understand the weight it carried. One evening, as he stood guard near the observation deck, Queen Zalira approached him. The nebulous storm raged outside, its light painting her scales in colors that no human word could describe. "Why did you do it?" she asked quietly. Daniel blinked. "Do what, Your Majesty?" "Shield my tail," she said, her voice softer now. "You could have protected yourself. You could have stepped back. Yet you chose to protect me instead." Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't think. I just moved. It's what we humans do sometimes. We act first, figure it out later." For the first time, he saw something like a smile flicker across her lips. Then perhaps instinct is the greatest power humanity possesses. She turned back toward the nebula, her tail curling gently behind her. "But know this, Captain Reeves," she said without looking at him. "From this day forward, you will not leave my sight. Fate does not make accidents." Cliffhanger Daniel stood frozen, the weight of her words sinking in. He had gone from a simple soldier to something far greater in her. Something he didn't yet understand. The nebula flared again, its storm casting shadows across the deck, and Daniel realized that his life, and perhaps even humanity's place among the stars, had just changed forever. Captain Daniel Reeves quickly realized that his life was no longer his own. Ever since the incident in the council chamber, Queen Zalira had made it clear he was not to leave her sight at first. Daniel thought it was just a strange custom that would fade with time. Maybe, after a few days, the Queen would decide the matter was exaggerated and release him from this uncomfortable role. But the opposite happened. Each passing day only made her demand firmer. Wherever she went, Daniel went. When she entered the negotiation hall, he stood beside her throne-like chair. When she dined, he remained in the background, standing stiff, while alien nobles whispered about the human who touched the sacred tail. Even when she walked in the station gardens, glowing with strange plants imported from across the galaxy, she glanced back to ensure he followed. Daniel felt like a prisoner of honor. Growing whispers, the station was alive with rumors. Humans who served on the crew teased him. "Careful, Reeves," one officer whispered during a patrol. "Another step and they'll crown you king of the tails." He tried to laugh it off, but it wasn't funny. To the Zanari, the matter was deadly serious. Some treated him with reverence, bowing their heads slightly as he passed. Others looked at him with anger, as though he had stolen something sacred. The weight of their stares pressed down on him day after day. Daniel had faced combat before. He had stood against enemies who wanted him dead. But this was different. Here, he felt like every word, every movement, carried meaning he didn't understand. Conversations with the queen, strangely, Queen Zalira herself, seemed calm about it all. If she noticed the whispers, she ignored them. When others challenged the human's presence, she silenced them with a single glance. One evening, as the station floated in calm orbit, she finally spoke to Daniel about it. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly, her golden eyes fixed on the glowing nebula outside the observation window. "Regret what, Your Majesty?" Daniel replied, keeping his voice respectful. "Shielding my tail," she said, "binding yourself to me by instinct." Daniel hesitated. "I don't regret saving you. I only regret the confusion it caused. I didn't know it meant so much to your people." Zalira turned to him, her scales reflecting the light like polished metal. "That is what makes it powerful, Captain Reeves. You did not act for honor or tradition or gain. You acted without knowing. That is why I cannot dismiss it as chance." Her voice carried weight, but beneath it, Daniel heard something else: loneliness. The queen who ruled millions stood surrounded by guards, nobles and servants, yet she seemed strangely isolated. Daniel bowed his head slightly. "I only did what any human would have done." She studied him for a moment, then gave a faint smile. "Then humanity is greater than most believe." A hidden threat. Days later, tension rose again. A message was intercepted by the station's security team, coded transmissions hidden within trade signals. When cracked, they revealed a chilling truth: a hostile faction. The Korath planned to assassinate the queen. The council dismissed the threat as empty words. But Daniel had lived long enough as a soldier to recognize danger. He had seen the way enemies moved, quiet and patient, waiting for their strike. Late one night, while on his watch outside Zalira's chamber, he caught a shadow moving through the corridor. The figure was fast, almost invisible, but Daniel's instincts sharpened. He drew his sidearm and gave chase. The intruder fled into the lower decks, vanishing into maintenance tunnels. Daniel returned breathless, reporting what he saw. The queen's guards were shaken. "They are here," Zalira said with certainty, her voice calm but sharp. "The Korath do not waste words. If they threaten, they act." Forced to flee the very next day, the attack came. Explosions shook the station as infiltrators breached the outer hull. Sirens screamed, lights flickered, and the sound of weapons echoed through the metal corridors. Daniel rushed into the queen's chamber just as a squad of masked assassins stormed in. Plasma fire burst across the walls. Without hesitation, Daniel grabbed Zalira's arm and pulled her into cover. "Stay low," he shouted, firing back with sharp precision. 2 assassins fell, but more pressed forward. Her guards fought bravely, but chaos tore the chamber apart. Daniel knew they couldn't hold the room. They needed to escape. "This way," he shouted, guiding Zalira toward a maintenance hatch. She hesitated for a moment. Queens were not meant to crawl through narrow tunnels, but the urgency in his voice left no room for argument. They slipped inside just as another blast tore the chamber. Apart, survival together, the tunnels were dark, lit only by flickering emergency strips. Daniel led the way, his pistol drawn, his breath steady. Zalira followed close, her tail brushing against the narrow walls. For hours they crept through the forgotten decks of the station, avoiding patrols of assassins searching for them. At times, Daniel used his military training to disable traps and jam enemy signals. At other times, Zalira guided him, pointing out alien circuits and hidden power conduits that only her people understood. They were opposites: human soldier and alien queen. Yet in that darkness, they became partners. During one brief pause, while they rested in a hidden chamber, Zalira spoke softly. "You risk yourself again," she said. "Why?" "You could have stayed behind with your people." Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow. Because I couldn't leave you behind. If they take you, everything falls apart. And because I said I'd keep you safe, her golden eyes studied him, glowing faintly in the dark. Among my kind, loyalty is sworn in ceremony. Among yours, it seems to live in action. Daniel gave a faint smile. We're not much for ceremony. The second shield their journey wasn't without danger. At one point, the assassins found them in a service bay. Plasma bolts lit the air, scorching walls and sending sparks flying. Daniel moved fast, turning fire, but there were too many. One assassin aimed directly at the queen's Taila. Cruel strike meant to break her spirit before ending her life. Without thinking, Daniel dove again, his body shielding her tail for the second time. The blast hit his armor, knocking him hard against the floor. Pain seared across his side, but he held firm, refusing to move until the danger passed. The guards who survived the ambush arrived moments later. Finishing the fight, when silence fell, Zalira knelt beside Daniel. Her hands, cool and scaled, rested lightly against his arm. "Twice now you have shielded my tail," she whispered. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with something deeper. No fate could make this chance. Daniel gritted his teeth, pushing himself upright. "It's not fate. It's just me doing my job." But the queen shook her head slowly, her golden eyes never leaving his. "No, Captain Reeves. It is more than that. You do not see it yet, but I do." A growing bond. By the time they reached the safe wing of the station, Daniel was exhausted. His armor was scorched, his muscles burned, but he was alive. More importantly, the queen was safe. The council was in shock. They had underestimated the Korth, and without Daniel's actions, the queen might not have survived, as the guards led them into safety. Zalira spoke softly so only Daniel could hear. "You think yourself small among the stars," she said. "But today, a single human stood against shadows that even my guards feared. You call it instinct. I call it destiny." Daniel had no reply. He wasn't a hero. He was just a soldier who refused to let someone die. Yet when he looked at her, when he saw the quiet respect in her eyes, he felt something shift between them, not ruler and protector, not alien and human, something deeper. Cliffhanger, but the danger was far from over. The Korth had failed once, but Daniel knew they would try again. The queen's attachment to him would only make him a bigger target. As he stood watch that night, his hand resting on the grip of his sidearm, Daniel heard her voice echo in his mind. "Twice you shielded my tail. Now, Captain Reeves, you can never leave my side." He wondered if he had saved her life, or bound himself to a fate far greater than he could imagine. The station never slept after the Korath attack. The smell of burnt circuits still lingered in the air, and soldiers patrolled every corridor with weapons drawn. The council argued day and night, debating whether to flee, rebuild, or call for reinforcements. Fear spread like fire, but in the center of it all, Queen Zalira stood tall. She showed no weakness, no fear. At her side, always, was Captain Daniel Reeves. Daniel felt the weight of it. He hadn't asked for this role, but now every alien I turned to him. Some looked with suspicion, others with respect, but all recognized him. He was no longer just a soldier. He was the human who had shielded the queen's tail twice. The council divided inside the grand chamber. Tension filled the air. Alien voices overlapped, sharp and panicked. "The Korth will strike again," one delegate shouted. "We must retreat before they destroy us all." "No," another countered. ... To retreat is to surrender. If we flee, they will hunt us to the ends of the stars." Daniel stood behind the queen, silent but watchful. He could feel their fear, and he knew fear was the first step toward defeat. Finally, Zalira raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. Her golden eyes swept the room, steady and commanding. "My people do not run," she said, "but neither will we act blindly. We will strike only when the moment is right." Her words carried power, but Daniel saw the truth behind them. She was strong, yes, but the council was divided, and their defenses were weak. The Korth would not give them much time. A human plan later. In her private chamber, Zalira turned to Daniel. "You are quiet," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "I've seen this before. Back on Earth, in wars past, leaders argued, while enemies prepared. By the time decisions were made, it was already too late." Her eyes narrowed with interest. "And what would you do, Captain Reeves?" Daniel hesitated. He wasn't a strategist, just a soldier. Yet he remembered the nebula outside, the storm of energy that had once shaken the station. Dangerous, unstable, but powerful. "I'd use the nebula," he said finally. "The Korath expect a weak defense. But if we lure their ships close enough, we can use the storm itself against them." Zalira tilted her head, her scales catching the light. "Risky. The storm could destroy us as well." "Maybe," Daniel admitted. "But it's better than waiting for them to come back and finish the job." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then the Queen gave a slow nod. "Very well. You'll do it your way, human." Preparing for battle, the days that followed were filled with preparation. Engineers reconfigured energy conduits to connect directly with the nebula's unstable fields. Pilots trained for sudden evasive maneuvers. Daniel worked side by side with Zainari tacticians, teaching them how humans thought in war, fast, adaptive, willing to risk the unexpected. Some were skeptical, but others listened closely. At night, he found himself speaking more with Zalira, sometimes about tactics, sometimes about humanity itself. She asked about Earth, its oceans, its forests, its music. He told her stories of soldiers who fought not for crowns or glory, but for the lives of those beside them. One evening, as the storm outside flickered with golden lightning, she said quietly, "Your people are strange, Daniel Reeves. You do not see yourselves as powerful, yet your actions shape the stars." Daniel gave a small smile. "We don't think of ourselves as heroes. We just do what needs to be done." Her gaze lingered on him, soft yet unyielding. "That is why I cannot let you out of my sight." The attack begins. It happened at dawn cycle. The Korath fleet emerged from the nebula, dark and jagged ships sliding into view like predators. The alarm spread across the station. All hands to battle stations. The Queen stood at the command deck, Daniel at her side. The council watched with pale faces, but she showed no fear. The enemy hailed once, their message filled with threats and mockery. Then their weapons lit the void. The battle began. Plasma fire rained against the station's shields. Zainari ships launched in tight formations, weaving through the storm. The nebula crackled around them, unstable energy flashing with each blast. Daniel's plan was simple but deadly. Lure the enemy deeper into the storm. Then unleash the nebula's raw power in a single devastating surge. But it required timing, precision, and courage. A soldier's gamble when the moment came. Daniel volunteered to lead the strike team. His task was to plant charges along the outer conduits. Channeling energy directly into the nebula's core, Zalira protested. "It is too dangerous. You have already risked your life for me." Daniel gave a short laugh. "Your Majesty, risking my life is the only thing I seem to be good at." She looked at him for a long moment, then lowered her gaze. "Then may the stars protect you, Daniel Reeves." With a squad of mixed soldiers, human and Zinara, Daniel launched into the storm. His shuttle rocked violently, lightning crackling across its hull. The nebula roared like a living beast, and the Korath ships pursued. Hungry for blood, the turning point thunder fire. Daniel and his team raced through the shattered decks of the station's outer ring. Plasma bolts ripped through the air, cutting down soldiers beside him, but he pressed on. "Almost there," he shouted, slamming the charge into place. The conduits began to glow, feeding unstable energy into the storm. The nebula rumbled, its golden light swelling brighter and brighter. "Now," Daniel yelled into the come. From the command deck, Queen Zalira gave the order. "Release the surge." The station fired, not weapons, but a pulse of energy directly into the heart of the storm. For one breathless second, nothing happened. Then the nebula erupted. A wave of golden fire swept outward, tearing through the Korath fleet. Their ships, unprepared for the storm's fury, were ripped apart one by one, till only wreckage remained. The battlefield fell silent. After Mathakorath were gone, the station still stood. Against all odds, they had survived. On the command deck, cheers broke out. Zanari soldiers embraced, their scales glittering in relief. The council bowed their heads, humbled and shaken, and at the center stood Queen Zalira. Her golden eyes filled not with pride, but with quiet strength. When Daniel returned, burned and battered but alive, she stepped forward. The entire chamber hushed as she spoke. Twice this human shielded my tale. Today, he shielded us all, let it be known. Daniel Reeves is not only my protector, he is the protector of two peoples. The words echoed across the chamber. Even those who doubted him now bowed their heads. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, scratching the back of his neck. I just did what anyone would have done, he muttered. Zedla smiled faintly. And that, Captain Reeves, is why humanity is greater than it knows. A new beginning in the days that followed, alliances grew stronger. Humans were no longer seen as outsiders or weaklings. They were seen as partners beings who acted not for glory, but for instinctive loyalty and courage. Daniel remained by the Queen's side, not because of orders, but because he chose to. Somewhere in the trials, their bond had grown into something unspoken but unbreakable. One night, as the nebula storm calmed and the stars shone clear, Zalira turned to him and said, Fate does not make accidents. Daniel Reeves. From the moment you shielded my tale, I knew you would never leave my sight. Daniel looked out at the endless stars, then back at her. For the first time, he didn't argue. Closing note: humanity's story among the stars did not begin with conquest or technology. It began with one soldier's instinct to protect. And from that moment, the galaxy learned a truth it would never forget. Humans are special not because of strength, but because of the courage to act when no one else will.